Hello and welcome. It is the end of August, so time to wrap up and talk about books. Definitely books. It has been a warm August. My son and I just shopped for his school supplies for when school starts in a couple weeks. Homeschool, but we need supplies for that. Is it going to become a trope for my channel if I keep saying I had a great reading month? I did have a DNF. If you're subscribed to my channel, which if you're watching this, you probably are, you saw my post on what that book is. But first, I started the month finishing up Eldest by Christopher Paolini. This is the second book of his inheritance cycle. His new book is coming out in November. I'm a little worried about having time to read the next two before then. I'm gonna have to set aside some more time for reading. If you're not familiar with the inheritance cycle, they take place in the fantasy land Allegasia. I always said Allegasia, but I heard Paolini on Instagram the other day say Allegasia. I also used to say Paolini instead of Paolini, trying to get better about pronunciations. The first one starts as a very classic farm boy discovers the dragon egg, goes on the hero's journey. It's been said it's basically Star Wars A New Hope, but with dragons, which to me makes it sound really good. And then after the first one, it deviates and becomes its own thing. You can still see some of the other fantasy influences that Paolini had, but it's not like, oh, it's just those other stories and he made his own story about it. It becomes his own story. The main thing with Eldest is that it's Aragon's training book. So he travels from under the dwarf mountain where the Varden are to the forest of Elismira and goes through all his training in this book. There's not a lot of action. There's a lot of Aragon learning, a lot of character development. That is the soundtrack to the movie Cars in the background, if you can hear that. Some people don't like this one as much because it's so slow. I like it a lot. I like that character development and when the characters are learning stuff and learning magic. Also, it's not just Aragon's point of view. The other main character is Aragon's cousin Roran. I really like Roran's story. He's a very passionate and strong character and I like following him and seeing what happens. By the time this video comes out, I'll have just put out my video on Aragon and my thoughts on talent versus skill. So if you didn't watch that yet and you've read this book, go check it out. Then my DNF book. It's the first one that I have put down in quite some time. DNF meaning did not finish, and that's Hyperion. I also just filmed my rant review. It'll have been out for about a week by the time this video comes out. I did not enjoy it. I was sad about it. It's one I have meant to read for quite some time. It's like this classic sci-fi, little fantasy elements. The art is beautiful and intriguing. There's like this sailing ship going through a field of grass. There's this weird creature. Everything about it sounds really cool. I found myself disappointed. It did not draw me in. I didn't care what happened to the characters. It was disjointed. It was abrupt in the way it switched gears as you were reading through. If you really want to know my thoughts, you can watch my rant review, but this one was not for me. I'm disappointed, but instead of choosing to spend time finishing it, I decided to just switch books and try something else. So the next one I started is Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. This is the first book of Malazan or Malazan. I first heard it called Malazan. I tend to think Malazan is correct because of the way the name of the place is spelled, which looks to me more to be Malaz than Malaz. It'd be like saying I'm in Americanian instead of American. American. I'm an American. American. Malazan, Malazan. This is the first book of a epic fantasy that spans centuries, I think. Lots of characters. This one is different than some other things I've read recently in that the characters are already well acquainted with the world of magic. It's not a young person going to train and learn. They already have big magic that they're doing. There are some parts that feel a little confusing because it feels like as I'm reading, I'm expected to know stuff about the world already. And a big fantasy book takes a certain amount of world building, a certain amount of introducing you to the world without making it feel super exposition-y, like they're just explaining everything. So you kind of get thrown in and sometimes I was confused, and then I'd keep reading and it would kind of become clear what it was talking about, like about some of the places and stuff. And then I felt like I had to go back and reread a little bit with the knowledge of what they were talking about. I am currently on page 128. It took about 100 pages for me to kind of see what the main conflict was starting to be. I still don't know if I'm right about what the main conflict is. And it took about that long for me to start caring about some of the characters. One of which just got stabbed, which seems a little early for a character death. We'll see how that turns out. I'm not sure I'm really able to say how I feel about it yet. It seems like a well-done fantasy book. The language is nice. There's a little bit of humor. It's definitely darker than things like The Inheritance Cycle or The Wheel of Time. I haven't gotten to anything so dark that I feel like I don't want to finish it. So, I don't know. At this point, that's not very far yet. I'm just gonna say, we'll see. I feel a little more determined to finish it after having put down the last one, but I also know I need to be able to give myself permission to not feel like I have to finish it just because I started it. This is the book I used in my short video about not enjoying a book and my alter ego saying, well, you know, you can just put it down and Google it. I know, but I still want to finish it. I still want to be the one who finds out what happens. After this will probably be to September. My TBR for September consists of making sure this is done, and then I'm going to go on to Brizinger because I want to finish all 4 of these before November. After all the events in Eldest, following Aragon and Roran, and they finally come together and war is on. The war has started. This one is a lot more about the fight between the Varden and the Empire. This is a reread. I know what happens. It's not a mystery. I'm not curious. But I like rereading things that I already know I like. It feels cozy and comfortable, and it feels like a good way to relax at the end of the day, to pick up a story I'm already familiar with. And I'll probably be okay if this takes the whole month. I will need to read Inheritance in October if I'm going to finish it in time for November. Maybe I'll make my September wrap-up and October TBR be the first time I go live. So keep an eye out for when I post about that, just in case. Hopefully it will be fun. And I will see you back here for more videos, and happy reading. Bye.